Hey everyone, welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast. If you're just stumbling along this podcast for the first time, we are primarily 12-step recovery. Most of my shows are people coming in telling their 12-step recovery from when they were a kid, what happened to them, and on out through life, and how they found recovery and how it has changed their lives. Uh, but I also like to have, the universe sends me guests that align with our purpose, and I love to have them on too because I get to reach out to people all over the world actually, and it's crazy. I've had a not long ago somebody from New Zealand, people from Australia, and tonight a guy who is currently residing in Thailand, uh, and it was just so cool to be able to do this. And uh, my guest Randall tonight. Uh, We set it up quite a while back, I think a month or so ago. Most of mine run quicker, but uh, I run with the flow of the universe. So, Randall, how you doing tonight?
I am doing
Or
fantastic excuse me,
except for
this
it's this
morning
morning
here in
for you.
Thailand.
Yeah, we're 12.
Yes,
It's this for you guys. It's 8 p.m. on my clock, and it should be 8 a.m. on his clock. And you're a day ahead of me. Is that right?
that's right. We've got a day ahead, so we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is so cool. Uh, and it's like I don't know. I've gotten used to wrestling with that. I don't do good with time zones. I don't do good with the time zone just to the west of me. 1 hour.
I
Struggle with
understand.
it.
I live by the world time clock buddy, and it just lines everything up, and you plug in the cities, and it lets me know when I'm supposed to be. And then there's some time zones that are half an hour off. It's like that really throws me.
Oh yeah, that does. We used to have a little thing around here in southern Indiana where we switched times and other zone didn't. So like at certain times of year we would be on the time zone that they were, and then when we went into daylight savings time, they didn't observe that. So half the year you'd be on the time zone that they are, and other half you wouldn't. They changed that, thankfully. So, I like to ask my guests, somewhat of an origin story because we didn't just arrive here. I can see that you are someplace in the ages of me, and I'm sure some 30 years ago you weren't the man you are today. And I like to hear a little bit about that story of that transition and growth and change of perspective that allowed you to now be sitting here on a podcast doing what you're doing.
Indeed. Well, um, Dan, the first thing I want to say is thank you for having me on here. And I really resonated with finding you, the spiritual underground. You were talking about before we hit the record button, so many people find you that way. I was one of those people. And the way you bring in spirituality really has me curious as to which way this conversation will go. I'm getting to the origin, and hopefully this leads back around to the origin story, but that your curiosity, your openness, and the way that you use spirit, I find very refreshing, and I think that we're going to have some interesting weaves in our conversation of even though it may seem like these are different approaches, what I do with Chinese medicine and shamanic wisdom. It and I've been in recovery now 30 years, and I've been working in treatment centers, and every place has the 12 steps on it, and it's so beautiful to see when the 12 steps are open, when they're interpreted. Let's put it this way: when people have a personal relationship, that's a way I think I like saying it. So I really see that in you. And some people use it as rules and guidelines, and they stay on the path and
A
just
very
don't look
rigid path.
outside it. And other people bring in other things. And it's like, oh, you say tomato, I say tomato. It's the same exact thing. So okay. Me, I'm born and raised in New York. I'm a New Yorker. Don't hold it against me. Um, and growing up back in those days, yeah, I'm 62. And back in the 80s, everybody played guitar or drums or something and wanted to be a rock star. I was no different. And me and two knuckleheads got into my car, which we called the prayer, because you
Ah,
prayed you were going to make it around the block, much less drive from New York to California. And we did. So we left New York and drove to LA. There's a big story there, some other people written about it. We got to LA, and in those days, yeah, everybody was in a band and everybody wanted to be famous. I'll just cut to the chase of this one where the two
and
people
what
that I
comes
moved
along
out there
with
with.
that?
Yeah. All right. Um, the two people I moved out there with, one guy moved back home. His mom died. He switched to crack. He didn't last long. He OD'd. The other friend I moved out there, he's still doing it. I don't like to drop names. It's an
But
anonymous
he's still
program.
running and gunning.
He's
He's
you
still
have
running and gunning and surviving that.
I don't say names, but you just pretty
Yeah,
much
that's
said the
okay.
names.
Well, okay. Yeah. It's interesting
You picked it
thing
right out
about
of the
how some
universe, man.
people crash and burn and some people be able to ride that train for a long time.
That is exactly those are the metaphors I use, and I got off the express, and yeah. So for me, while things were getting pretty nuts, I started doing what a lot of kids do at that age in the 20s. It's like, well, I want to jump and kick and be Bruce Lee. And so I started studying with a Chinese guy. And for as much as I wanted to do all those acrobatic things in my 20s, he was like, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to also learn these other slow down things. And you're going to have to learn how to breathe and qigong and what they call the internal arts, which was really boring at that age. Um,
Nah, nah, I can't get with that.
yeah, exactly. So, but it kept me alive. So I had these things going on, and to cut to the chase, when I really got sober after bouncing off the bottom for years, right? Um, as you well know, when we get sober, a lot of times we have to get rid of the slippery people, places, and things. So for me, that was everything. So
Yeah.
when I got rid of slippery people, places, and things, that was also my identity of music, being a musician, and who am I now? What do I do? And the only thing I had to fall back on was this Chinese thing and the spiritual path that I was on. And it's like, how am I going to make money with this? This doesn't seem very promising. Um, so I went to school for it and I got licensures and all those wonderful things. And, nobody was able to give me a straight answer. So I got those answers for myself of how does sticking these little needles in the ear, which is the standardized protocol used in treatment centers all over the world, for acupuncture, the NADA protocol, it's called, developed in the Bronx. And how does that work? And I wanted to be able to answer people who asked me that question and not in some esoteric Chinese medical or spiritual concept, but in plain English. And I like to think that that's what I've been doing for these last years and coming up with how does this work? Why does it work? And again, this kind of goes back to the beginning of when I prefaced this origin story. All right, I'm doing these esoteric things. All this treatment center wants to know is, how do I check the box and get insurance reimbursement for it? Because Randy, for whatever reason, they seem to like you. And, okay, we'll keep you going, but, we need to get paid. So you got to explain it in terms that A, work for the clients, B, medical colleagues and see how do you turn this into modern psychological concepts and weave it all together. So that's what I like to think I've been doing is just turning this stuff into plain English. So that's kind of it in a nut.
And it's kind of funny how when you find this groove or whatever and you lay into it, I can't exactly explain. I can't just tell you, okay, here's the way it works. It's there's more to it. It's way deeper than that. And you find these, and that's the other thing about me having these podcasts. I find these wonderful people, and I like to just say that these people who are a force for the good. They are a force for the good. And there's many things in their modalities and their methodologies that are similar, but there's twists and turns in them also. Nobody's exactly the same.
You know, one of the things that also jumped at me was your second line right on the top of the page there, which is bringing the juice.
The juice, that's our home group's word.
I love that. And that's what's in that groove, right?
Yeah.
Is and I didn't even know if you were talking about music at first or if you were talking about life, but yeah,
Kinda
everything,
like
right?
prana, it's the life force. It's that place where you feel so good at being in it, and when a friend shares with me some cool thing that happened to him today, he is sharing the juice with me, and sometimes I call a guy, "Hey, man, I got some juice to share."
Uh,
And I've been in my home group for I've been sober for 10 years. Uh, and when I arrived there just a little bit before that, they were using that word juice, and I didn't really hear it anyplace back then. It was new to me then. As I go along, I hear it used pretty often now, but to me, it's that inexplainable force in life that we get to experience. We don't get to experience it all the time. It comes and goes, but when the juice gets poured on you, you know you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're where you're supposed to be.
Boom. Yep. Let me ask you this, because this is one of the angles that I use, is that when there are those moments of laying in the groove, it's getting the juice. I'll go back, stick to the music just to keep it a little bit specific for people. Um, there's something else in the room, and we would talk about that, and it's almost like life a lot of times if I use the metaphor of a river, it's like, you're swimming upstream. And a lot of times it feels like, the challenges of the day are coming at you. But when that groove hits, the flow switches and it's like I'm being carried by something, and then if we're playing together, there's something else in the room and we're being carried by it. We're sharing the juice. And for me, that is one of those, I like to use the term making the spiritual practical. And so there's something about that shared juice, that shared experience where if we can articulate it afterwards, it's kind of like, yeah, I felt that. It's like, where'd that come from? I was participating, but it didn't come from me. So it opens up an interesting conversation for people based upon whatever beliefs they have.
The old Christian thing of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, I see that three thing go on, and I do believe that there's some of this energy, this higher power energy using 12-step philosophy that's inside of me. And then when I'm with my brothers, because I have a fantastic men's home group that just can't be beat, man. I mean, we are tight, we are welcoming, we're just it's magic. And when we're all together, that's another power when we join our powers together. And then when we do that, it seems that we also get this other power that comes from someplace else And as you talk to me about the band thing, I can understand it in the same kind of realm, that as you have your energy and your talents and whatnot, and then you join it with these other guys, and then some other power comes in and sweeps in and joins in with it. I'd never thought about that before.
Boom. Exactly. And to turn it into terms maybe that somebody who is early in recovery can get, because I love the way you just said that. It's exactly the same thing um, as the band. Because, like, well, Randy, I'm not in a band. And, it's okay. Okay, you just shared your origin story. What did you do after you got sober? Because you just said that, wow, I can't, no slippery people, places, and things anymore. So that's everybody I know. And it's part of my identity. So I didn't know who I was anymore,
Yeah.
the I aspect. So what am I going to do? How am I going to get that juice? Because that was the most important thing in my life. And when I would explain it to people, which if I can get it half as good as what you just did about your home group, I would explain it in the particular way of when I was playing music, like we talked about that juice. It wasn't me by myself. And I depended upon the feedback and the juice that the other people in the band were giving. And if somebody said to me, Randy, you need to go write a bridge, go in the closet, write a bridge, come back. It's like I'd come out with a contrived thing. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need you to feed it back to me. And so when I would do groups and treatment centers, I would say, this is the same exact thing. I need you more than you need me. You guys are in here thinking that, it's a one-way street, that I'm here downloading this information. But no, that's not the gig. The gig is I'm writing music with you. It is the same exact thing. So when you
Interesting.
participate and you're authentic and you give me your honesty and what it sounds like you got in spades in your home group, that's how I stay. That's the juice. That's the thing that I was getting when I was playing music, inebriated, bras thrown on stage, and who knows what's sitting on my amplifier, right? It's like, no, this is even better. This is the essence of what I was going after. So, yes, that's
What did you
amazing.
play? What was your instrument? What was
I'm
your
sorry,
main
what's that?
instrument? What was your main
Oh,
instrument?
guitar,
Yeah. So, uh,
guitar.
it's interesting to me. Like we got I don't know. I got a home group of about 60 guys, and then we're a men's home group, and there's probably 1/6 of them play guitar and well. You know, it's amazing how many guys. So we got a couple drummers and a couple pianists, and that I don't. I could be overstating something, but it seems like it's an interesting thing to watch. And the thing I see about guys that are in recovery, they always got these talents that are like laying underneath of their disease. And I believe that this thing, if I want to say about disease, Paul Hederman, a guy I follow for and still follow, he talked about it like a computer virus, like it's a parasite, it hijacks your operating system and it doesn't allow you to be you. And and you watch this parasite be released, this computer virus be excavated, and these guys are like, we have these retreats and guys are sitting around playing the guitar and singing, and it's beautiful, it's like, wow. And that's one of my things. There may be a term for this, but I get these tingles from my spine that come up into the back of my skull and just, I mean, I am like, if when that happens to me, I'm yours forever. How long you'll do it. I had a really early sponsee come over and I have a piano and he played it. Can I play your piano? And I sat on the couch and he started playing piano, man. And I'm just like, oh, I'm like a cat. Oh yeah, it feels great. And I actually did a podcast with a gal. No, it wasn't a podcast. She was a podcast guest, but she's asked me to take her through the 12 steps. She's not familiar with it. And here in my realm, we believe the 12 steps was sent down for everybody. And we're offering it to everybody. And she asked me to take her through the 12 steps for a couple specific things that she's powerless over at the moment. And then she's also trading me back her modality uh in trade for me doing this. And when she was telling me, it was last night, she was telling me about what she wanted, what she's offering to me. I could just feel that just pulsing up through my spine and into my back of my neck and the back of my skull. And and that's an instant yes, right? I don't have to think about that no more. It's not like, well, let me think about it. No, I'm in. And you get these the universe sends you these messages when you're on the path, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Uh, I'm a certified yoga teacher today, which is something I would have never thought I'd ever be. And
Congratulations.
and I love that they taught us to get in alignment with our true north. I love that. When I'm in my true north, and you talked about a minute ago, and some other words that I say the skids are greased. When I'm in my true north, the skids are greased and it's pretty easy sailing.
I just, you know, speaking of synchronicities, right? Yeah, when
Yeah.
things align up and you get those little goose pimples on the back of the neck, up the arm, and then all the hair stand up. That was one of the episodes I just read 5 minutes before coming on. I was like, oh, look at this, True North. That was Kat, right? I think you said. Uh,
Oh yeah, Kat, my yoga teacher. Did you
I
listen to the
don't,
podcast?
I
One
didn't
Spiritual
hit
Underground podcast?
play, but I see that it's there. It's
Yeah.
that's the one that's lined up for me. I'm like, oh, I want to check this out.
Yep.
Um, yes.
It,
So
it you know,
there it is.
yoga brought her to a place that, where she couldn't get to, and again, it's different modalities, and who knows what you need or what he needs or what she needs. And that's what's cool about this is that I got a toolbox and you got a toolbox and Pat's got a toolbox. And these people, we just got to get people hooked up with the right teacher and they can, I don't know what you even call it. Like I want to say successful life, but that's not right because success is tied to dollars in today's words, and that's not what I'm talking about. Although we do have to have dollars to to live, uh, but this well, Bill Wilson in the Big Book says, "Happy, joyous, and free." I'm
That
happy,
works.
joyous, and free today.
That'll work for me. Happy, joyous, and free. Yeah, that sounds pretty successful.
Yeah.
One of the things that was immediately apparent for me when I was checking out the spiritual underground and I was first, oh, this is interesting, was the beauty of the men and your approach. How do I word this without pissing people off? So, well, it may piss people off, but this is the way it is. Um, you do freely use the word love. And for so many people, especially in early recovery, loving a brother, telling a brother you love them, telling another man, love you, bro. It's like that was a beer commercial years ago,
Yeah.
right?
I love you, man.
Y- You guys got this, and that was immediately apparent that there is this beautifully harmonious yin yang going on between a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine among a single man, you and the group that you're creating and the way that you convey that. And that's kind of rare. So that was one of the things that's like, oh man, I would love to talk to this guy, Dan, And just this, I'm having a personal conversation here. I'm glad we're doing a podcast, but that's one. Sometimes it's like I'll pick. I'm getting older. I don't need to do this anymore. But pick an MD or a psychiatrist in the olden days of, why Chinese medicine is better, or why you cracking on, prana, chi, things you can't see, spirituality, and have a lively debate and discussion to try to bring people, but I'd rather have fun and be in alignment. So that was one of the reasons why I was looking forward to
Good.
this
Thank you.
conversation.
Yeah, we have something special, and I'll tell you, my sponsor's ultimately responsible for it. He's just celebrated back in May 40 years. He's a counselor. He's a substance abuse counselor, and um, he got 18 years sober, and he was not. He was looking around in the rooms and looking around and seeing that people had something that he didn't have. Like he was just, I'm sober, I'm cool, I'm good, it's cool. But these dudes look like they have a level up from what I'm experiencing. And he had the guts to go ask some of them fellas about that. Hey, you seem to be doing something I'm not feeling. And he gathered up this basket full of different teachers after that, where he'd go through the work with one guy and get new tools. And then when that was done, he would look for the next guy that leveled up again, and he would go after that guy. And he just kept on leveling up with teachers. And I am the result of that because I landed in his chair when he had all these great tools to offer a guy like me who was when I hit my bottom, I was looking at 6 to 20 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections for breaking in houses, stealing pain pills, and and that scared me. Scared me bad. And and I like to say I was inside a cardboard box that was painted black, and there was a little pinhole in the corner, and that was Christopher offering me the 12 steps, but there was nothing else to look at. There was nobody else asking me help. And I just throw myself into this dude's hip pocket and did what he told me to do. And I'll tear up talking about it every time I do. And reasons unknown, I didn't go to prison. I did have to do, I did, I got sentenced to a year of home incarceration and a year of probation. Uh, but those were blessings too, because when I was on that year of home incarceration, I couldn't go to the Super Bowl party. I couldn't go to the bachelor party. I couldn't, and again, we're capable of screwing everything up, right? I could have, but I wanted a new life. I wanted one, and this guy was offering me one, uh, and he promised me that would happen if I would just do what he told me to do. And I did what he told me to do, and here I am 10 years later with a life I can't believe. If I'd have wrote a script for myself 10 years ago, I would have sold myself short.
I love that. It's even greater than we can imagine what's waiting for us on that other side. And, you
When we
know,
get our compass needle aligned. Go ahead. I didn't mean.
no, no, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to flip here. I'm the interviewer. Dan, thanks for joining me today. So, how would how would we right now explain this? Because we sound like a couple of like, oh yeah, you guys are on the other side. You guys got years under your belt. And you just spoke of, you're getting teared up, going back to that time. It's like I'm right there with you. I know how I'm Italian. It's like testardo mulo, a little stubborn ass. But how do we turn that stubbornness and flushing every opportunity that is given to us when we're on the other side of the line to somebody, to dangle something in front of somebody to say, no, this is for you too. Yeah, that what can we one thing that we could say that hits one person that would maybe make it sound appealing?
Wow, that's a tough thing, man. It really is. It is tough. I always say, you know, until it was my idea, it wasn't going to work. Until I decided that I was going to do it, and it was my idea. All my heroes in 12-step recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous is a speaker tape. His name is Scott Lee. I'll just say his name. He says it on the internet. Um, I had a revelation one day, and I said, after 4 years of hanging around AA, I said, you know what? I'm going to work them steps and do what these people are telling me to do. Like it was my idea, you know? And I wish we could plant a seed into people. I have a secret weapon. I do, and that's that spiritual underground home group I got. Come with me, meet my friends, and then that pile of evidence may or may not, but usually does convince them. And that's what you just asked is the magic question. How do you get people to like turn the corner and decide to pour themselves into some path of recovery? It doesn't have to be mine. I'm not saying 12 steps is the only path. I'm not saying that. But pick one and pour yourself into it. And I'm gonna guess with guys like me and you, when we were where we used to be, uh, you know, I, I was 20 years old and getting all kinds of trouble and didn't think I had a problem. I had two DUIs before I was 19 years old and didn't think I had a problem. I've been pulled over and arrested for possession of acid and marijuana and underage consumption of liquor, and you couldn't tell me I had a problem.
Yep.
And I wish there was this. I wish there was something, But I just have to fall back to when you're ready. I have a solution, and it's 100%. Really, I really think that my solution is 100%. If you will work this program and practice these principles in your daily life, your life's going to get a whole lot better. I had a guy tell me that early in recovery, and I couldn't hear it at that time. His seed that was planted in me echoed out into later on when I was really in trouble.
Right.
So how do you that's a great question. Like how do you get that through, I've got a 19-year-old daughter today that is struggling. And on my 8th birthday, she texted me and said, "Can I come see you?" And I said, "Sure." And I thought she was going to come over and congratulate me on 8 years of sobriety. She come over and
Instead,
told me instead, she come over and told me in tearing eyes and completely broken down that she was hooked on fentanyl.
wow.
And at that
Sorry
point,
to
she
hear
was
that.
17.
Wow.
And I see the blessings today. She couldn't go tell her mother that, but because her father was or because her father was a sober man and been sober for a while, she could come to me and live that out. And I see that significance of that. Uh, and it's been a road. And today, by all appearances, she's on the upswing. She's doing well. But that was a tough road, man. Tough road to hoe, man. And what do you do? You think about like to go back to your question about how do we reach out and touch people and let them know that there is a solution. Uh, Man, if I had to answer to that, because I know that I can't help my daughter really. I can't really help her. I can just be an example of what recovery is,
Yes. Well,
and
I
I can
think that
point
was
her
a
in directions.
I think that was a beautiful answer. And it's that old Chinese proverb of well, I'm really sorry to hear that, and I'm really glad to hear that. Um, that you were, she has a place to bring. Maybe you were that hole in the cardboard black box for her.
Yeah,
And
good
it's
point,
this
man.
It's this, I don't know what you've got, just like your sponsor, who's the psychotherapist. These people are a level above me. I don't know what it is, but there's something shiny there and I want some of it. And also what you said about your home group, I think that's an answer too, because I can, I could point to all of these wonderful models and systems of medical and how they work together. And I could watch half the room go to sleep. But if I can offer them what you just said of, hey, come to my home group, you don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything. You know, um, okay, I'm answering my own question in a bit here, in that I like to say, especially to really, really expensive treatment center groups, when they've spent a boatload of cash, one of the first things I like to say to a group is, all right, I know the cameras are on and we're shh, guess what, guys? You're not addicted to drugs or alcohol or any process. You're not. And they look at me like, what? And I'm like, no, you're addicted to a belief. And I'm like, what do you mean a belief? And this belief of right here, right now, in some kind of way, I'm broken, I'm not good enough, I'm dirty, I'm unlovable, I'll never be, blah, 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 blah. So,
Amen.
psychology calls that the limiting core belief, right? So, how do you change a belief? The only way, in my experience, to change a belief is to bring in a new experience. It takes a new experience to change an old belief, because cognitive ideas, that's a good idea. Thanks, Randy. But I'm going out. But if you give them an experience of walking in the home group, you don't have to say anything. You're gone. There's the third thing. It's they get to
Yeah.
witness and maybe get to feel a little bit of that juice that's going on in their room, and they don't even know how to word it. Of, I don't know what it is, but I want some of that. So there's some experience there. So there's my answer. So thank you.
Yeah, man, and that's the thing about these conversations with people, because that's something I, at some level, was still blind to, you know. Uh, but you just laid it out, you know. Uh, Evidence is what it takes, and I will say that, and I do say this, that as I started turning my compass needle, and at that point in time, I had no idea that's what I was doing. I was just following my sponsor's direction, and this evidence started piling up behind me, and it started getting so deep that, I wanted to call bullshit on it, right? Of course we did. We like, that's just, I was just lucky, it's a coincidence. And but I was still walking the path because I was desperate, did not want to go to prison. I didn't. And I walked this path that he was saying. And before long, I look back and go, that pile of evidence is way too deep for me to what's the word? You tell me.
Discount,
To
to
discount
ignore.
anymore. Ignore, yeah. And and then when I bought into it, I said, well, okay, cool. That stuff is because I'm doing this stuff. And at that point, there was a bell that rang in my head that said, okay, keep doing this stuff, and I'll keep getting that stuff. And 10 years later, I'm still doing it, and I don't expect it to ever end. But dang, that's a hard wall to knock down when you're in early
Yeah.
recovery. Uh, and I give my guys this stuff, man. I pour it on them uh, to tell them my story and my experience. And I have this batch of friends that I can say, talk to him, listen to his story, listen to his story, listen to his story, listen to his story. And then that evidence starts piling up, and they either will or they won't. It's then at that point. I've had a great
Yeah.
deal. I've been I've had a phenomenal amount of success sponsoring guys and helping guys get sober. It's not even fair. It's been so fun. Uh, and it builds my hunger too, you know,
Yeah,
and tell people at some levels it's selfish. I'm doing it for me. I can't keep what I have unless I give it away.
that's it.
And and I want you guys to get this and I need you. I need you to help me stay sober.
Yep. That's my line. That's exactly I need a place to put my gift. I got this gift and, you know, think about it when you were in early recovery or when, if you, people who are, it's just like they don't have a place to put their gift because
It's a great line.
yeah, yeah, they whatever deserving belief they have or crap, the word trust comes in, right? It's like how much trust have we broken? And so why would somebody trust me when I say I have a gift for them when I've been
Right.
so untrustworthy for so long, but
Or the
got to
world's been
finally
so
give.
untrustworthy to them. That's part of my story. And I think we've come down to understanding that most of what's going on with guys like you and me have come down to some childhood trauma or abuse or neglect or, whatever basket you want to put it into. And there's very few people that escape that, you know, slide through without getting it. And I did not get free of it until I confronted it. I stuffed it, stuffed it, stuffed it, and then a sponsor made me confront it. And then when I confronted it, what seemed to be such a heavy weight on me, lightened. And
Yeah,
now I can share it with you, and I can talk to people about it. Where it was my deepest secret back then. Um, and man, I've done a lot. So are you a 12 stepper at all?
I am not, and I am.
Okay.
It
Well, the
didn't
fifth
work for me
step,
in the
you then if
beginning.
you are and you aren't, then you understand the fifth step where we sit down and tell our deepest, darkest secrets to another man. And when I
Boom.
got that out of the bag and talked to my sponsor about it, which is like, and it happened like this. I didn't tell him all night the evening we met. And at the end of the night, he says, "Is there anything that you haven't told me?"
Like he said it for the first time.
Yeah. And it was such a, you know, I do the I do the 12 steps like a ceremony, not like a regiment thing. We do it like a ceremony. This is a spiritual ceremony. And when I went to my sponsor's house to do my fifth step, he had candles burning and low, nice music playing, like I was coming to a date or something, but it lowered my guard, and it made me feel comfortable being there.
Yeah.
Because you probably know that, the olfactory and different stuff like that will have a play on how you feel. And and I sat down and he said that, and I opened up to him that, for and to this day I have no idea how many years it was, but I had a homosexual relationship with a friend of mine from the time I was someplace around 4 years old to 7. And I don't know that that window is right. Uh,
Right.
but I'd never told anybody about that. And I remember meeting my classroom friends, and they talked about gayness and that was a problem. If anybody's, so then I had to say, "Whoa, shut that down." But I had no idea I was doing anything wrong. And,
Of
and to
course.
this day, I don't think I was doing anything wrong either. Right now, I don't have any weight about that. That guy's actually a friend of mine today. Uh, but I carried that. And that's just an example of these things that we go through that we carry into adulthood. And I had no idea that was a piece of what was underneath of my alcoholism and my addiction was that I was bearing stuff. stuffing it and not getting it out. And when I got it out with my sponsor on that fifth step, when I walked out of his apartment that night, it was like I left a 50-pound backpack behind because he didn't judge me. He allowed me to get free of it. He, uh, I don't know what you would call it, allowed me to understand that that was not unusual. That's normal. That's not unusual. You're not broken because of that. You're not dirty because of that, because those two words were in my brain.
Yep. I am dirty. Yep.
And golly, I'm in such a different place today, and I look back and I can open up to those kind of things today, and talk to a man like you that I just met tonight, and tell you that, and I would not have been able to do that if it wasn't for this thing called recovery.
Well, thank you, Dan, for sharing that with me. I'm sure you've said it before, and probably on the podcast too.
Oh, sure, yeah,
And that's one of the magics in the 12 steps, in that you were able to walk into that room, from my perspective, sitting over here on the other side of the world through Zoom, that he was able to set it up like a ceremony. That in that place, one of my teachers would say is that in ritual, in this kind of intention, we leave space for the spirit to come in to do what it needs to do.
yeah.
And it's just the juice going between the two people there. And there was this safe space. But in that safe
Safe
space
space.
is the invitation for something bigger to also bear witness, for us to drop off
Yeah,
that
we
50-pound
invite
backpack.
that spirit to come in and help us in this experience. It's part of the process is to invite, you know, 12-step recovery says a God of your understanding. We leave it open. You don't have to pick a particular box. But come in here and help us as we walk through this sacred experience and guide us and I'll have full confidence that whatever that force is, it will do it. And it does every time. Uh, the evidence piles up and you can't deny it.
It piles up. You know, eh, do we have time for a quick story?
We have a plenty of time, man. I really don't have a time limit. I don't work
I,
on time.
I know that, it's late over there, and I don't want to drag you out into the
It's
late
not
of the night.
it's 8:56 here. I'm good.
You
I'm
good?
feeling good. This juices me up, man. This is more prana and more life energy. I love talking to people like you. So tell me a story.
Hot damn. Right back at you. This is what I get back out of it too. So I had a feeling of this. No, I knew this. So thank you for again accepting my request to have this conversation. So um I l- pretty much when you ended at 7 years old, probably a little older than that, I was sexually abused by an older man in his 70s.
Mm,
And won't go into that stories of the traumas and everything, but the monstrous secret that it was probably ended at like 10, from like 9 to 10 or 11. Um, I carried those secrets. It affected every relationship I had since. It affected every truthful conversation I had since, because I had to keep a major portion of myself, behind me, hidden, secret. So there was these filters in my head that when people wanted to know truths, I defaulted into some kind of story or lying or some, there's something there that, I couldn't be myself because I am fill in the blank, dirty, unlovable, the whole 9 yards. And of course, wasn't even aware of any of this. But when I got into my late teens, maybe even around 20, in that car called the prayer, I decided one day that I was going to go kill that man. And
Mm.
the only reason why I didn't take an instrument of any kind was because I was so filled with hate, and this all came up in my consciousness that the only fulfilling way would be with my bare hands. I really just needed to, in my young mind, without any guidance, the answer was to get that 50-pound backpack off my back, was to take care of it in this, rational way, right? It's like, well, that needs to be done. And I drove a few hundred miles to where this place had happened. And I banged on that guy's door, and I knew he was home and he wouldn't come out. So I was just going to wait him out. And so it was one of those two-story houses on an old farm out in the middle of rural New Jersey. And I went downstairs and waited in the garden. And what happened is my cousin, who was about 5, came out of the house that was downstairs. The family lived downstairs, and was running through the garden, and was running through all of these plants, that are planted and taken care of. And he's running through the garden. He's 5. He's having a great time. He's passionate. And I'm just waiting. I'm cooking. I'm stewing. And I'm looking at him, and okay, that's nice. The perpetrator, the old man, opens up the window from the top stairs, and he points a gun. And he points a gun not at me. He points a gun at my cousin.
Mm.
Now, obviously, this is not something he's done because the little kid's playing in the garden, right? He's doing it, and he's shaking because now I'm gonna get you. And he sees me. He knew I was there, and he pointed it at my cousin and shaking and yelling, "Get out of my garden!" This was the magical moment.
Mm.
And for me, what happened is I didn't think. And I got up and I stood between my cousin, and I looked at him while he was looking at me down the barrel of the gun.
Wow.
This was not bravery, as I learned later from mythologists talking about Joseph Campbell and these moments of peak experiences. This was, from a psychological perspective, that was not my cousin. That was innocence. That was me. That was my inner child.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the innocence of all of us. That
Yeah.
his gun, his instrument of destruction, sexual abuse, to use metaphors in psychology, he was pointing at, and I had to stand between him and innocence. I had to
It's
stand
powerful.
between that. And again, this was not courage. This was not bravery. This
Right.
was, I had to. And
That's just God. That's just spirit.
yeah, it broke the spell. And I was too young, and I didn't know how to put it together in my head, but
Sure.
I didn't I didn't need to. It got rid of the 50-pound backpack. And I drove home thinking, part of me is thinking, you're a failure, you're a coward, you didn't go what you needed to do. And there was another part of me, God, it's like, you did. You didn't even know that this is what you needed to do. And it was one of those things, looking back, that it was such a powerful, transformative moment of my life that changed that hate, that there is another way, and
It's
there is
powerful.
spirit. Yeah.
It's a powerful story. It's and I wonder if we all get to experience that. I think we do all get to experience that. But look at the extreme circumstances that it had to fall under in order for you to experience it and me to experience it. I'll
I
just
guess
step
one
back
of
a
the
little
reasons.
bit, and I really appreciate your
Go ahead.
vulnerability to talk about that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, this tremendous amount of power and vulnerability to share our stories. And that's what touches people. And I think that's what this medium has been invented to do. Uh, be able to talk about these things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to talk about. You wouldn't share. You might share it with a therapist. Uh, and we have these things, and it weighs us down. My sponsor talks about that we have a backpack on our shoulders. Every instance, everything that happens to us, we put in our backpack. Everything. It doesn't make any difference what it is, good or bad. But the problem is that the bad apples in the bucket rot the other bad apples. And at some point in our life, and this is what we do in the 12 steps, we take off that backpack with a trusted person. We dump it on the floor and we sort through it. And we put well, certain stuff needs to be put in the past. The good stuff needs to be put back in the backpack. And we get to it's almost like an oil change.
a, a full oil change, indeed. That's such a beautiful, again, the different tools that do the same things.
Yep.
And um, for people who get stuck on, oh, well, that's nice, Dan. It sounds like, psychotherapy. I'm going to sit in the office again. I'm going to dump out my backpack and I'm going to go over the same old story. And so it's like, yeah, no, that's not what's happening here. And one of the things in Chinese medicine that I would add is things need to be digested. And there's the rotten, it's rotten. The secret is a secret. It is what it is. And it's only by us carrying it around in the dark in that backpack that makes it keep rotten.
That's it, right.
So, it's just rotten. And rot has its place to then allow it to continue. It makes great fertilizer. It turns into something else. And that's what emptying the backpack and going through it does. It's just like, well, this is extremely rotten. This is disgusting. I've been keeping it a secret, but look how beautiful and powerful it can be when we bring it into the light of awareness and share it and transform it, digest it, and release it, and allow it to go along its natural course of where it's supposed to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what talks about. It's an ice. There's an ice around it. And we hold it up to the sunlight of the spirit. That sunlight will melt that ice away. And we just have to go through it and do it. This inventory of looking at those things and placing them at the past, because nobody does a personal inventory of their past. I won't say nobody, but very
Yeah,
few.
yeah.
You have to have gone someplace to go through that inventory and look at what happened to you when you were 3, and 5, and 7, and 9. and up through there. And that's what I love about the 12 steps is it asks you to go back and inventory everything that made you who you are today. And you ask the spirit above, whatever it is, I don't care what you call it, to allow you to make this list of these things. And then we have a couple other we go through columns and we look at that. And the guy gets to process that in a healthy manner. And we just don't do that. We normal existence doesn't allow for that. You have to find somebody like me or somebody like you uh, that will help assist that. And I'm sold on it that we have to what Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living.
Amen. Oh, yeah. Can I
So
ask you a
tell me,
question?
yeah,
Oh, you no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to invite you to talk about your stuff. It's the only thing I was getting ready to do, what you're offering and what your methodologies and stuff. That was where I was going next.
Okay. I'll do that by asking you the question I was going to ask, and I'll weave it together somehow, some way. This is exactly what I do. Um, I ask questions. Uh, was there the reason why I'm asking this is because you obviously trust spirit, and that again, that was one of the reasons why I was really attracted immediately to. Oh, I'm gonna check. I'm gonna listen to some of these. This is amazing. Um, my new premise these days, because I'm always reinventing myself, right, and coming up,
Mm-hmm.
is stop searching, start trusting. Trust
Mm,
those truths you already know. Speak to your heart. They touch your soul and they reside in your bones. That's something that just gets me. It's like
I
I
like that.
I love that idea of there's a truth that I've always known. It resides in my bones. And despite all of the stupid things that I've done in my life, for some reason there's some kind of blessing that I'm still here and didn't end up, as you were talking about, in jail or in the morgue, because those are the two landing spots, right? Um, with maybe a hospital visit in between. Um, I always knew, I always trusted, but not trusted enough. I always trusted
I like
that
that.
there was, you know, yeah. Their spirit, I do have a relationship with it. I do know it. It resides in my heart. It's in there. But I got things to do. I'm a young man. I've got to go out and do things. I got to go. So my question to you is, did you always have this kind of knowing, what some people would call faith, but maybe, we didn't express it as this openly. Maybe it was part of the secret. Um, did you always feel like you had this kind of connection with spirit?
Well, I've observed that I experience everything in the rearview mirror. I never do see it forward of me. But now, where I'm at today, I do see that where spirit has been tapping me on the shoulder time after time, and you and so many years I didn't listen. I didn't. Uh, when I answered the call and said, "Okay," and it was a full surrender due to that potential prison sentence, and I surrendered. I said, "Okay, there, let me lay myself out, and I will." You know, if you've sent me this guy and he's telling me what to do, I always like to say my little joke is the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, right? If
Yeah.
he'd have told me to put a booger in page 223, I'd have done that. And that's the way I surrendered. when I got there, right? And I did that, and I uh, it's worked out forever more, but I know that the spirit, higher power, or whatever, was tapping me on the shoulder when I got my first DUI at 16 years old,
Right.
and got another one at 19 years old,
Tapping me.
and the other little things where I got busted for drugs and whatnot all through those years. To me, looking in the rearview mirror, God was saying, or I just like to say God because it's easy to say. It's not Christianity. It's not any of that. It's this spirit, this power that uh, talks to us and will guide us and will uh, show us what we're to do next. And I couldn't get in tune with that until I was 45 years old. And finally, I decided to listen. And I'm
That's
forever
right.
grateful 10 years later.
All those taps. Maybe some of them sound like a kick in the butt, but still ignored, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like, there's a thing I like if you wanna look it up, it's, Finding Joe, and you may already know about it on
Oh,
YouTube,
yes, of course.
and he
That's what I was
first he
referring to
starts with a
earlier.
first he ta starts with a tickle feather, and
Yeah.
he ramps it up, you know? Yeah, that fits me exactly. I kept on just getting a tickle feather and then this and that, a little bit more, and then finally he's got the sledgehammer out and said, "Boom, uh, are you gonna listen now?" And I said,
Do I have your
"Okay, I will."
attention now?
There you go. It's such an interesting phenomena that we do as humans, that we can't hear that in certain places in our lives.
Yeah.
And 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 you watch people, I bury people because they can't hear that
Yeah.
message. And today, my mission is to carry that fucking message. Sorry about the fucking, but that's how passionate I am about it. Uh, uh, It's why I do this podcast. I have another podcast. It's the I Am One Two podcast, uh, or that's the one where my sponsor carries his message, and he is highly, uh, what would I say? He's had a great deal of experience to share with other people, and tries to do that. We do that through the I Am One Two podcast, and I'm sitting over here on the producer side of the table when we're doing that. And and frankly, it's a blast.
Yeah.
I've never had so much fun in my life than to to focus my life on helping other people. Golly, I found that that's the best thing there is.
I'll
And
agree with that.
from my understanding, that is where you are at, because
Uh,
you wouldn't
j-
be on the other side of the podcast table from me if that wasn't your mission.
how many people have said to you, right? Well, and being a quote unquote professional with licenses and all, having to pay those dues every year. It's like, Randy, why? Why do you work with addicts? What is wrong with you? Eh, Here's a wonderful term. They're a difficult population. It's
They
like,
are.
what is wrong with you? What kind of, why would you do that? Like, well, you know, actually, there's nobody I'd rather work with because
Yeah.
I'm cheating. Not only am I cheating, do I have personal field experience in this area, but one of the things I love about it is you said one of the magic words, which is surrender. Uh, we could talk about that one till the morning for you. But the idea that in the beginning of my career, it's like I had people with gallstones, I had people with insomnia, fill in the blank of a general practice. And it's like, well, if you changed your diet, if you slept right, if we dealt with this stress and you exercised, you know, whatever, fill in the blank, 80% of these things will at least get better. Um, so my point here is, oh my goodness, the stories people would come up, it's the same thing as addiction. It's like the resistance of wanting to
Yeah.
participate in their own health to make themselves better is like, what am I doing? But with an addict who has gotten to the point of, oh, geez, all right, you know what? Maybe I've got a problem. And and they open that door to a little bit of surrender, and then they get to that point that you said to where it's like, you know what? Put a big booger on page 223, I think is what you said, right? I'll just do it to full surrender. When we've got somebody who is so willing, because I remember that willingness, what a gift that is. There is, as you just said, there is nothing else like that. And the amount of the honor it is to be able to look across from another person and to receive that trust means that, oh crap, maybe I am that trustworthy. I better live up to this. I got some work
Yeah.
to do. So that was beautiful, and
I heard that.
thank you for that
Right.
reminder.
Yep. Yep. And when I'm working with a guy and I watch them, and they come in here with all these blocks to higher power and all these things they're blocking off to, And I said, don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Just work these steps. Just walk with me. Just walk with me. We don't have to get hung up in all that. But if you don't worry about having this solid understanding of a God of your understanding, that is not the point. Uh, let's just walk through this, and in the big book it says this. The point of this book is to get you in touch with a power greater than yourself that can solve all of your problems. And then later on, they go, "You was right." Yeah, and they're sober and having a good time, man, and their relationship with their wife is better, and their relationship with their kids are better, and there you go. And it ain't me.
Yeah,
I'm just an instrument. I'm just
exactly.
a funnel of that power coming into them. And there's nothing that fills my heart more than that.
Yeah,
Really isn't.
that's how I get paid. Right,
Yeah.
that's it. Get that
Yeah.
heart filled.
I run around the handyman and woodwork in order to make my bills get paid. And if I could do 12-step work only and get my bills paid, I'd do it. But I still, I don't know if it works that way. I don't know.
I don't know if it works that way. It's like we're rich in a different way. Um, well, I will go into the business. I've made my life
Yeah, tell
simple.
me something about because we just been jaw jacking. So make sure you get into some of what you're up to.
And it's exactly what jaw jacking. I like that. Um, as I get older, I like to just make things simpler and simpler. So what I do on my Substack is I offer free. Um, I do shamanic journeys, and I do something called shamanic writing at the Sober Shaman, and that's such a loaded word. And I do it on purpose just to get people curious. And it's basically about everybody has the birthright. Everybody has the ability to communicate and get direct revelation with from spirit, the God of your understanding. And so I use these sneaky terms to help people understand and teach them this particular. When I was in treatment centers, I had to call it guided meditation. Same thing, whatever, floats your boat. But I offer them specific places they can journey to, take this um, external or internal. If you want to see it's from a psychological, it's all inside your imagination. Okay, great. If you're going and visiting representatives of your higher power or your higher power itself, and they take you to these places and do these things, great. And it's very specific and it goes along a system of recovery, going through the cycle of addiction that we map out every step of the way. And it fits in perfectly with the 12 steps. Isn't that funny that truths fit together? And then the other thing I do is I do writing prompts. And so it's just very simple. And I'll give you a different writing prompt every time, and you write directly to that spirit or from that spirit, or maybe even merged through the eyes of that spirit. And what is that like to, look back at yourself through the eyes of your spirit, or to look at something else with your spirit together? And you write from that place. Don't think, just write. And it's amazing what comes out. So I just keep things simple that way. And they're two tools that I notice that are very integratable into whatever practices people are doing, whether they're just doing psychotherapy, just doing the 12 steps, just doing whatever path they're on. And yeah, I like being duct taped these days and filling in maybe some of the places that people feel like something is missing, and offering them something that is tangible, making the spiritual practical, and just keep doing it. Get your experience and see how that lands with your belief. Does it strengthen your belief? Does it change your belief? Do we change those old beliefs that are in the backpack? And can we strengthen some of those new ones and see the spirit that's in front of us nowadays, as you would say? So that's kind of what I'm doing these days. And if people want to do that with me privately, I still do private sessions on Zoom. That's how I make my money. And otherwise, they can find me on the Substack and do it for free, as much or as little as they want.
Thank you, man. As again, I said earlier, uh, when you watch that TV and you watch the internet and you watch these other things, it looks pretty gloomy at times. But I keep on running to people like you who are a force for the good and are out there trying to help people be better people. Uh, it's overwhelming that I get to do this and I get to meet people day after day, week after week, who are in a position to help people. And I don't see that out there. I don't see that on Fox News. I don't see that on these other things. So I thank you for being an instrument in that. And I believe, fully believe that the light will prevail. People like you who are bringing the light and helping people that will be that will be what wins out.
I'm right there with you. That is my hope too, Dan. And you know, I felt like when you ring a bell or a gong, or I love that term, harmonic resonance. It's like there was
Yeah.
something immediately that I pushed that first podcast of yours and I heard you say a prayer right in the beginning. You were like, I wasn't even sure if I was going to leave this in the podcast, but I'm like, I'm glad you did, because that immediately is like, I was hooked. I was like, there's something about this guy's got something, a force
Thank
for
you.
good, that I'd love to just, what'd you call it? Jaw jacking?
Y'all second. Just shooting shit, we get to bounce around our ideas and yeah, God, spirit, whatever keeps on sending me these folks to talk about, to talk with, and and you have, like you said, everything is really in alignment with one another. What you're doing is in alignment with what I'm doing. And I talked to this shaman from Mexico, and she's doing the same thing. And this person from uh, New Zealand, and although it's not quite the same, it's parallel. And these people that are a force for the good for the universe. And I want to team up with every one of y'all I can team up with. And I
Well,
think
I'm glad you're out
we
there
will
doing it.
win. We
Yes.
will win.
You know, the way you just said that, it's like, would you want to eat, hamburger every day? No. It's like, I want to go to the buffet. I want a sample. One day I want really good Chinese food. Then one day I want a really good oven baked pizza. We don't have that much here in Thailand. That's that's one
Yeah.
thing I miss. But I do
Because
know a
there's
place
some
somebody
good
just
food in
pointed out.
Thailand. That's my favorite food, actually.
See?
And
See?
countries I visited, Thailand's food, uh, I can't, I can't, that's the best.
Yep, it's pretty darn good. So yeah, like may we all be these forces for good, and I do appreciate you, Dan, and thank you again for having me here. It's been wonderful talking and
Thank
sharing this
you.
with you, and
Now,
who knows?
well, and thing, book, website, anything else you want to say, because I won't just jumped off here without hearing that.
Well, if people want to get in touch with me, it's under my name, randallyons.com. Randall is Randal, one L, and Lyons, Lyons. Shoot me any questions, comments, concerns you got, and I'll be happy. If I don't know the answer, I'll point you to somebody who does.